Good morning, everyone. My name is Haroon Moghul. I'm here with my friend and co host, Joey Taylor. It is the last few days of Ramadan. It's also St. Patrick's Day. Joey's wearing green, even though I'm the Irish one. We have a conversation today that's pivoting back to religion and spirituality after a few weeks off the topic. And this one is a heavy one, a heady one, and one that we have been struggling with and building with in our lives for years now. I'm going to have Joey open it up.
Yeah. Thanks, Haroon. I don't think I'm Irish either, but I'm glad that you are the Irish one to just
People are
hold
often surprised. They think I'm Scottish, but I'm actually Irish.
it. Yeah, I felt weird not to have somebody represent a little green today on the stream.
It's either that or you're Muslim, so you can take which one of those you want.
Exactly. I think the longer these conversations go, the more people will suspect that I am in fact Muslim. So, all right. So here's what we're talking about today. There's this phenomenon that I think a lot of people are familiar with. It's called the spiritual but not religious. It's a group of folks who identify as spiritual. It seems about 70% of our population identify as spiritual. And then about a quarter of that population, just under 20% of the total population, describes themselves as not religious, meaning they are spiritual, but they don't see themselves as partaking in a formal religious practice or belonging to a formal religious institution. Um, Typically, this is kind of a choose your own adventure kind of spirituality. It's DIY, it's bespoke. You kind of keep what resonates and you leave all the baggage behind. Maybe there's some hurt that's come in your experience. There's some theological positions you disagree with, that kind of thing. Most folks see the spiritual but not religious phenomenon reflecting a deep distrust of institutions and also a strong current of individualism, which I think pervades so much of our culture. I recognize this impulse in myself, the spiritual but not religious piece. 3 episodes ago, we talked about my own Lenten practice, which is still ongoing for me. I didn't grow up practicing Lent. But in recent years, I've started to observe it. So on one level, that's a very kind of individual, personal choice for me. But at the same time, it's not something I invented. It's something that I'm tapping into. It's something that Christians have practiced for centuries. And so what's interesting here is that within these communal religious practices, and you and I have talked about this a fair amount, there's often this expectation that something spiritual will happen even within the larger communal religious practice, that you'll feel something, that you'll learn something, that you'll grow somehow. But the truth is, sometimes you enter into these practices and you don't feel much of anything at all. You're just practicing, which makes me think about the difference between spirituality as an individual experience and religion as a shared rhythm of practice that carries you even when the experience isn't there. So here's my question for you, Haroon. You're coming to the end of Ramadan this week. This is a month that millions of Muslims around the world have been observing together. So I have two big questions for you that I'm curious about. Yeah, here we go. What does it mean for you to step into a practice that's so deeply communal, especially on the days when the spiritual feeling isn't necessarily there? And the second question I have is, do those communal rhythms ever come into tension with the personal spiritual experience of the practice itself?
Absolutely. There's no way it doesn't. I've been spending a lot of time the last 5 or 6 years. So we moved to Cincinnati almost exactly 6 years ago. And so I'm back in suburban American Islam, which has become very anchored around big masjids, big mosques. And Muslim worship is very communal. Muslim
Mm-hmm.
religiosity is very social. I'm also from the Sunni tradition, and the word Sunni is a contraction of the people of the path. and the congregation or the community. So it's literally built into the title, the term of
Yeah.
how we understand and define ourselves. So this idea that you have to be tethered to the community is just a given. And in Ramadan, a lot of our worship is meant to be with people, not just with people. It's a very, if you've seen Muslim prayer, I know you have, but for people who've not seen Muslim prayer, it's very physical, it's embodied. Men and women in separate sections stand literally foot to foot, shoulder to shoulder. It is very hard to find time for yourself, although there is also an evolved, sophisticated Muslim tradition of praying by yourself, of being alone with the alone, but it's really hard to find that. And
Hmm.
and I've been struggling with that, and I think part of the problem is that, or part of the challenge is that for American Muslims, Ramadan is, of course, a social time, and we are a minority. And so it's very hard when you go to the mosque not to want to be with people who are going through the same things you're going through. Also, in case people are not paying attention, there's yet another war in the Middle East that has ramifications for many Muslim people. So there's just a lot going on. So you want to be with people who get how you feel right now. But then what that means is that it's harder and harder to find the time to be alone. And so, really, to me, the problem is, or the challenge is, American mosques are being expected to do double duty. They're social spaces and they're spiritual spaces. They've got enough challenges when it comes to fundraising, covering budgets and costs. And then on top of that, people come in with wildly different expectations. Some people want to be there to see people that they care about and they like, to have a family evening, to celebrate alongside folks who eat what they eat and believe what they believe. And other people are there to be with God. And maybe it would be nice in an ideal world where there were different kinds of spaces for that, but that seems unlikely in the United States in the near term. And that's what I struggle with, is I want both, but I don't want the mosque to be both either. I don't know if you feel something like that in how you experience Lent. That does it ever feel like there's two different things, or there's multiple things you're trying to get out of Lent, but they might be pulling in opposite directions and you're not sure which direction to allow yourself to be pulled in?
Yeah. I feel like I've been hearing this kind of question, this theme come up a lot recently in my life. So maybe I don't know, God has something for me here. But the question that I'm wrestling with is, um, are religious practices or religious beliefs, are they primarily tools that drive an outcome? Meaning, are they for a preset purpose that has to do with me? An experience I have, an intention I'm carrying, some way I'm hoping to kind of improve myself. And I don't know if I can articulate it, but I think I bristle at that framing. Um, because I think that practices and beliefs do have an impact on me. I think they quote unquote work, you know, but I also don't know if that's if that's the foundational purpose of what those practices and beliefs are. And so I don't I wonder if some of what's going on here for you and me is because I am operating out of a context where I grew up, where like my personal spirituality was the center of my religious experience. So often people would talk about how we're not offering a religion, we're offering a relationship, a one-on-one relationship with the divine, with Jesus. Um, and so I think I've sort of like corrected it to the other way and said, I don't know if I can actually practice this thing, this faith by myself. Um, Whereas what I hear coming from you is it's such Islam is such an explicitly, inherently communal religion that sometimes you want the more personal part, the more spiritual part of what's going on in the practice. So I don't know. I guess maybe I feel a little uncomfortable with the framing, maybe.
Yeah, I was going to ask you on that note, why did you start observing Lent?
Transparently, it was probably because people around me were doing it, I think.
Did it feel like it? So you said that when you were growing up, it was not within. So I think it's actually a good place to rewind a little bit. So you said you're not comfortable with the framing. So you're also telling me you grew up religion. I shouldn't even say religion. Christianity is famed not as religion but relationship.
Hmm.
And then
Hmm.
people around you are practicing Lent. Did you feel like by you partaking in that, were you betraying anything? Like how did that unfold?
Well, I think I had like by the time I started practicing Lent, I had already betrayed my kind of fundamentalist evangelical roots, probably. So I didn't feel any tension about that move, but I do recognize when I go back into places that I grew up in with friends who I grew up with, that when I talk about these kind of practices, Lent, Holy Week kind of practices, Ash Wednesday, that kind of thing. I notice this is probably much more in myself than in them, but I notice that I feel self-conscious about it, because it's not something that I expect them to be thinking, oh, you're doing the religion thing, which is so much less than the spiritual experience, the intimacy, the mystical kind of interaction with the person of Christ. So I still feel some of that tension within myself, but um, mostly what I think that I've sort of begun to consent to is that, these practices, um, yeah, I think this is true. I don't know. You'll tell me if you disagree. I think these practices are, um, technologies or spiritual technologies that have a formational effect on me, on my desires, on what I want, on how I'm acting, um, and on the community that I'm participating in. And so that's what I think that I'm sort of consenting to.
You're describing, so this is blowing my mind because probably when most people outside of fundamentalist evangelical Christianity think of those words together, they do not think mysticism. They do not think spirituality. They think actually
Hmm.
rigidity,
Hmm.
conservatism, insularity, closed, not open. And I don't mean that in a pejorative way, but that's the common stereotype that an
Yeah.
evangelical is not someone who, if there is a religion spirituality binary, and I'm gonna, I don't know that I buy that, but let's say there is, or at least there is in popular culture. So it does exist in the sense that people think it's a thing. So on that on that kind of scheme, fundamentalist evangelical Christianity is more on the religion side than the spirituality side. But you're saying that's not how it is from within that tradition or how you experienced it growing up.
Well, I mean, there's always a difference between reality and self-conception. So I think from an outsider's perspective, you could definitely look at fundamentalist evangelical Christianity and see heavy, um, traditionally religious categories that you could impose upon what the practice. But the self-conception is that religion is a dirty word. Religion's not a thing that we're practicing. Um, because what it implies, I mean, there's layers, there's layers to this, but what it implies is that, that the primary emphasis is a living, active relationship, with the divine through the person of Christ. That's ultimate. So,
So then when that tradition looks at Catholicism, for example, how does it see Catholicism?
I mean, I would say, every kind of fundamentalist religion sees other religions in a pretty judgmental light. Um, but I think the kind of things that you would hear is that it's empty ritual, that, there's no heart in it, that, that kind of thing. the spiritual side of it isn't there, or to the effect that there is, to the point that there is a spirituality. It's not the kind of pure spirituality that the community that I grew up in would appreciate or pursue.
So then when you find yourself drawn to or participating in Lent, it's because people around you have already are taking on that practice. So that's the space you find yourself in. So you start. This
Hmm.
is, you said, I don't know if you said here when we were talking previously, some years back, right? 5, 6 years back, probably.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
So then here's my big question for you. If you call Lent a spiritual technology, and I appreciate the shades of Foucault in that question, or in the question that's coming, what is Lent developing you into, or who is Lent meant to turn you into?
Yeah. I think it's about for well, it's interesting because I went to for me. I think Lent is supposed to reshape your desires. The point here is to to deny yourself in something meaningful for you, and to the point of reshaping your desire for God and for the things that God wants. Some people would say something like, every time I reach for my phone and I'm not doing social media during Lent, it reminds me that actually what I should be reaching for is God, or the things that God wants. So I really love the frame of reshaping my desires for that. That's what Lent is doing.
Is it working? I'm putting you on the hot seat, Joey.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, no, I hear you. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it's working. I'm not sure if it's working.
Enjoy is the wrong word, because then we're doing the same thing, right? We're imposing an individualistic framing. Is it something, actually, maybe there's nothing wrong with that, because we live in a secular society where nobody is imposing these things on anyone. So
Right.
if you're not feeling it, you're just not going to do it, probably. Of course, there's social pressures and things like that. But is it something you look forward to or find yourself drawn to, that when Lent is over, let's say next winter, and it's coming again, it's a few months away, do you find yourself in a place where I'm looking forward to this? What do you feel as it approaches?
I feel the things that I feel expectation for are Easter morning. I feel expectation for that. And it's not necessarily the reprieve of Lent. It's the breaking in of, like, the resurrection kind of mentality. Like, this is the primary kind of theological category of hope for Christians. And um especially in kind of progressive Christian spaces, there tends to be just a lot of um, anxiety and depression in this moment. And so I really look forward to, um, but Christ was risen. He defeated death. There's an expectation there for me, that I really love. I think it's sometimes difficult in the spaces I find myself now kind of occupying, for people to practice that kind of spiritual fruit. Um, Lent itself is not something I would say I look forward to. I think it's something that,
I'm going to quote you on that. We're just going to
yeah.
make that one: Lent is not something I look forward to.
No,
And
but I
just
don't think
circulate it.
it's not, if I'm being totally honest, it's not really a fixation for me. It's like,
Interesting.
it's a rhythm that I participate in, and it's going to come and it's going to go.
So it's
And
more of a means to something than a thing. Is that fair to say, or no?
no, I don't know if it's a means. It's more like, I think rhythm is what I would say. It's a rhythm the intention for me is to participate in these rhythms this community that I'm trying to be a part of has set in place for thousands of years, and so I'm trying to participate in those rhythms. I think it has an inherent intention in and of itself that I
Yeah.
want to also consent to, and I think that's great. But I'm not totally sure if I am always so in tune with that larger corporate intention every single day of Lent. Um, yeah. So
But
does that make
is
sense?
it
Yeah.
fair to link the two things? So you talk about Easter as hope, as resurrection. Is Lent, it is what Lent calls you to or asks of you, or imposes on you, if you want to be a little bit more strictly religious, less spiritual.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Is that required for the hope?
Well, that's the juxtaposition that I think like the liturgical calendar is setting up, right? So there's deprivation, there's denying yourself, and then there's the end breaking of the resurrection of hope. So that's what it's trying to play at for sure. Um,
Can I ask you a pointed question then?
ask me, yeah,
Do you
no,
think then, do you think
yeah.
that, do you think that religious communities or faith communities that do not practice Lent then don't experience the fullness of Easter, of resurrection, of hope?
I often am worried um, that when people talk about hope, what they're really talking about is escapism. I think I think that especially is a thing in the context that I grew up in, where the only real good that can happen in our world, not in our world, the only real good that can happen is in the afterlife. Like there's always this sort of escape plan that we're thinking about. Um, I've really been formed by, I mean, Catholic thinkers like Henry Nouwen, who would say that you actually have to come into grasp, into terms with your own despair, your own loneliness, in order to come out the other side and find hope. And so, yeah, I think hope needs to have been rooted in some real experience of suffering, and I mean, maybe you would even say sin. Um, I think like coming out the other side of that is the way that I think authentic hope is found. And by the way, I would, this is a rhythm that's found within the larger Lenten kind of season, but also within Holy Week. I mean, Friday is the traditionally the death of Christ, and Saturday is a dark time, and Sunday is when hope breaks through. So I don't know. I think that's a structure for it's it's both something that I try to believe in, and also I think a rhythm, a structure for how reality often works. So
That's interesting. So then, when you practice Lent now, when you observe Lent, how do you define Lent? Do you define it based on the people? Because you said it's important to you, or maybe it's necessary to you to observe Lent with other people. Do you practice it according to a specific? And I know this is not there's not like a clear cut answer, but I guess I'm trying to understand. Is it more about your Lent follows the rhythm, to use your word, of the folks around you who you choose to observe with? Or is it a specific religious tradition? Because there can be a tension there. I think that was the tension you even
yeah,
referenced when you
yeah,
asked me that question about
yeah,
Ramadan.
yeah.
Is my Ramadan the Ramadan of Cincinnati, or is it a different kind of Ramadan? And does that make sense, what I'm trying to point to?
No, yeah, yeah, no, it does make sense. Uh, I think that in terms of Lent, there's the classic, like, what are you giving up for Lent kind of thing. What are you going to do for Lent? Um, and most often people are identifying that for themselves. Um, and then like the closer you get to traditional forms of the faith, there's things like we're eating fish on Friday. We're doing some other additional things on top of it. We're not saying the word hallelujah. Like there's different things like that, right? That you're kind of going to add to the practice. Um, and the space that I'm currently in, I think, which is sort of not it's not evangelical, it's not Catholic, it's like this kind of mainline space. I think most of it is very self-directed, your Lenten practice. You come to church on Sunday, and for sure there are things happening that are only happening during the Lenten period. But what I often crave is an accountability structure that's found in the community itself. And so I've constructed that for myself with friends, with individuals, but it's not a corporate thing necessarily,
What do you
right?
mean be corporate?
I mean, like, it's not a thing that the religious institution itself is supporting or upholding, right? It's a thing that I'm pursuing myself.
With other people, but again, it's not top down. You mean it's
It's
more
not top down. It's not prescribed. It's not that kind
sure,
of thing. Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
It's chosen.
It's chosen, exactly. And
Okay.
and is therefore, I don't think it's bad. It's meaningful for me because I chose it. Um, and if I were to step into more traditional forms of Christianity, I would get more of that. But the place that I'm at right now, it requires me to have some agency in how I'm practicing even these kind of prescribed rhythms and rituals of the Christian faith.
So when you identified social media as the thing you want to abstain from,
I
right?
was
And
giving that as an example. This is like classic. That's not, yeah, 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 yeah,
no,
yeah.
I'm not knocking that. At least I think for a lot of people, right? There's probably we want to get off of our
Mm-hmm,
phones more,
mm-hmm,
right?
mm-hmm.
But I want to know why you want to take social media away in the framework of the larger spiritual technology that you hope Lent helps you realize. Does that make like is there a specific reason why you want to withdraw this thing in terms of who you want to become or what you want to push or pull yourself towards? Right? Why this thing and not, I don't know, coffee, for example?
Yeah, no, so I mean, I talked about this 3 episodes ago, but like the phrase that I keep coming back to, like kind of the core of my Lenten practice this year is this idea of returning. I will keep returning. That's what I'm thinking about because I don't want to set up. Anyways, that's beside. I just wanted to represent like what I'm actually doing this practice.
Sure, sure.
But I think social media is a part of it because if Lent is about reforming our desires, which I think it is, the key ingredient to that is our attention, what we give our attention to. And so um, the capacity to have our desires be formed and reformed is dependent upon giving our attention to things that are in line with the way we want our desires to be reformed. And social media, as we all know, has a way of snatching up all that attention that it can. Um, and so I think that's a really practical way for me to to make space, to make room for some reformulation of my desires.
How long have you been off for the whole of Lent? Pretty much.
It's funny. People are going to be like, "You're not on social media. I see you posting stuff that Haroon's posting." I'm like,
But you're not
yes,
using your phone. I know that,
yeah,
right? You're
yeah,
not
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah,
you're
yeah,
not
yeah,
'cause yeah, yeah.
yeah.
I've done the
Uh,
same. I'm not on social media. I'm not on Instagram except for what I need to do for work, for example, at Xavier or
uh,
podcast or certain
uh,
news updates. And even then I set a timer that I need to know what's happening in order to speak to certain things in public fora. But beyond that, I try to put it away as best as I can. I know it's messy and it's muddied, but so I'm acknowledging that from your side, but it's been pretty much the whole of Lent, right?
yeah, yeah,
So then
right.
how does that feel spiritually? And I guess what I'm trying to understand is do you feel like you've realized something from that returning or that departure?
I think that when I am in the mode of scrolling in social media, just that general frame of mind, there's an increased sense in myself of hurry and anxiety. Um, I think it's hard for me to be conscious of spiritual things of God, of the movement of God, of the ways in which God's presence is showing up in my life when I'm feeling um, always hurried and in a rush and frantic. And so I think it makes some space for that. Um, it's not a silver bullet. I'm not like all of a sudden, like super awakened or something. It's not quite like that. But I think there's more capacity for me to identify that in my life when I'm not on social media actively. But there's trade-offs here because of course, what sort of is overlapping with that phenomenon is also this idea that the ways in which I am in tune with certain friends, like in Lebanon right now, the events that are going on across the world, I'm just less connected to all that stuff if I'm not on social media, and so it's not like there's a pure kind of road to enlightenment or something. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
hear you on that. I think that has been for me, I think also something I've gotten out of this Ramadan in very painful, difficult ways. But maybe that is the rhythm of life that there's this idea of enlightenment that's peddled by folks like Deepak Chopra, who then turns out to be an absolutely awful human being. But I think traditional religion suggests that probably the idea of enlightenment as escapism is impossible and actually dangerous.
Right.
And most of us will be tripping and falling and stumbling over ourselves
Right.
all the time. But we can at least have moments of clarity and more sophisticated moments of clarity. And I think more than anything, I think I love what you just said is that ability to step away and see things in perspective, which doesn't mean that the outcome or the moment is any less fraught or difficult or exhausting, but that maybe it appears different if we
Mhm.
have the ability to step away in that moment of exhaustion, hurry, worry. Does that make sense?
It does yeah, it makes a lot of sense. One of the questions I wanted to ask you, Haroon, and I don't know if I can frame this quite right, but there's something here that feels legitimizing, that makes something feel authentic when a practice or a tradition is handed down to you, right? It's something not that you sort of take and fashion and make it your own, but it's actually given to you. Um, I think Ramadan's like that for you, right? What do you think? Like, what are some of the qualities of a religious practice that you receive that's handed down to you, as opposed to something that you grab and you fashion for your own?
Well, the easiest answer is when it's passed down to you, it's probably been passed down to a lot of other people. And so you are in this with other people. When I was growing up, Ramadan was there was not a lot to Ramadan. It was a small mosque. We struggled to find an imam to lead prayers. There were very few accommodations. Now you can go to Target and find Eid cards. You can find all the Ramadan decorations you want. There's restaurants and coffee shops and events and overlapping events and crowds at the parking lot. And that does come about because this is not something we chose for ourselves.
Yeah.
It's something that was passed down that we choose to want to continue to pass down. And so I will say Ramadan is a lot more meaningful, even on a Muslim metric, on a traditionally Muslim metric now than it was 20 or 30 years ago, because in my faith tradition, in the Sunni tradition especially, community has a specific valence. It's
Hmm.
supposed to be communal. And so if it wasn't communal, there was something hugely lacking. It's that sense of mutual reinforcement that we are doing this together, which makes it easier. It makes it more fun. And I don't mean that in a trivial way, but also it makes it more real because
Yeah. Yeah.
if faith can't be lived in the messiness of actual life, then it's not really faith.
Hmm.
It's a
Hmm.
kind of retreat or play acting or pretend. Real life is where the rubber hits the road. I mean, to I mean, anyone can say, for example, when I have this much money, I'll do this with it until they actually have that much money, right? So it's that sort of thing. Anyone can say I'll be a good person where there's nothing in my life that's holding me back or confusing things for me or making it hard or painful or whatever it might be. I have Ramadan brain. Clearly, you can tell that from my ability to form this. But I do think you're right. I think that it is escapism otherwise, and so that sense of this thing being passed down makes it meaningful. But it also makes it hard because Ramadan pulls us in different directions, and we have to figure out how to strike a balance. And we might not all agree on what that balance is.
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
a month of breaking fast together. It's also a month of abstaining from food.
Mhm.
So immediately you have a little bit of a tension. If you're inviting people for meals, then you have these big elaborate meals. Does that defeat the purpose? Are you supposed to eat simply and then go to the mosque? What are you doing at the mosque? What should the mosque be doing for the community? Those are all questions that aren't that easy to answer. And I think for me, that's why the last 5 or 6 years have been very complicated because I've been trying to figure out where I fit into that.
Yeah, totally. Well, and I hear like a theme here that maybe there's a tension here, but I would love to hear you just kind of unpack it a little bit more. You said there's a moment where you choose to continue to pass the tradition on. I mean, you're working with a ton of young people, right? You have kids yourself. I mean, I'm sure you've gone through these moments yourself. It sounds like maybe this is kind of a moment that you're going through as well right now. The moments when you opt in, when you step in a little deeper, um, when you say this is actually mine. It's not just something that was given to me. It's something I want to continue. How do you talk about that kind of decision point, especially with young people, like as they're coming to a point? Is it an initiatory experience? I'm not sure what it is, but how do you talk about that moment with people, with young people, when they actually have to make a decision about whether or not not just is this their identity, but is this something they really want to engage in, they want to pass on, they want to participate in, they want this to form them? How do you talk about that?
Asking them questions.
Mhm.
What is Islam?
Mhm.
A deceptively simple question. Most people, when they answer that question, will answer in terms of beliefs. They'll probably answer in terms of rituals, and that's where the answer stops.
Mhm.
What I don't hear often is outcomes. And
Mhm.
I don't mean outcomes in the sense of spreadsheets and Excels. I mean outcomes in the sense of what is Islam meant to do or to cultivate?
Mhm.
Who is a Muslim?
Mhm.
What qualities in a person reveal an Islam in them? So,
Mhm.
for example, one of the hallmarks of Muslim societies traditionally is hospitality. That if you go to a place, people will open their homes to you. They will feed you. They will feed you before they feed themselves. They will give to you before they give to themselves. And underlying that, beneath that, there is an incredibly rich concept called tawakkul, trust. This idea that everything we have comes from God,
Yeah.
everything goes back to God. We are merely conduits through which that thing passes. And for me, I think this Ramadan, I had this moment where I really sat with that concept that do I really trust in God? Not in the sense of observing ritual and showing up at the mosque and things like that. And those are good things. Obviously, I'm not knocking that. But Muslim listeners will know that there's a kind of three-part scheme within the tradition. Islam is the basic kind of foundational level, necessary but not sufficient. It's submission, that you hold yourself to account for the ritual obligations. Then comes iman or faith or trust, and then comes ihsan, beauty or excellence. And I had this moment on the 27th night, which was 2 nights ago, where it hit me that I haven't even gotten to the second stage yet.
Mm.
But it didn't hit me in the sense of, oh my God, I'm a failure. But oh, here's something I would like to work on, and it's going to be really hard. And it may well take
Mhm.
decades to even begin to get to that point. And so for young people, because I am actually hopefully answering your question, what I want them to know is I want them to know two things. The tradition is a lot more sophisticated than it might seem in terms of daily practices. not to put those practices to the side, but to put them into this bigger picture. But the second is that this is then a lifelong journey. It is not something they have accomplished simply by showing up to the mosque.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
good, but that could be in some form escapism.
Yeah. Yeah.
It could be that it's easier to show up and pray with other people, and it is impossible to sit by yourself and pray for any length of time. And those two things should not be mutually exclusive. They should be mutually supporting. So I don't know. I think it's seeing that there's a lot more to the tradition than maybe was initially presented, and that these rituals and rules and obligations are meant to push us to become something, or maybe even you could say to lose something, to come out the other side, refined, purified, cleansed, stronger, humbler, however you want to frame it. There's a lot there. And that's
Yeah.
a big part of what Ramadan is.
Yeah, I love the framing of returning to your true self. I think I really like. I think there's some precedent there for remembrance, right, within the Islamic tradition. I think so. Let me ask a question for you. There's a personal one. That question, the first question you asked, what is Islam? Has the answer for you changed and evolved over the years, or is there like kind of one kind of pristine answer that you're shooting for? Does that make sense? Like,
This is probably not the episode where I talk about why I joined a Sufi order and then why I left.
huh?
But I mean, I can if you want me to, but there's just a lot there to unpack. But I joined a Sufi order because I was looking for a deeper meaning. That ritual alone had not realized anything in my life. If anything, ritual became a burden. It exhausted and fatigued me, and I could not see what the point of it all was other than a kind of just beating myself up with it.
Mhm.
Do this and do this and do this and do this and do this. And if I do all these things, then I will be a good person. And when I discovered Sufism, I found beauty and culture and art. But most of all, the thing that makes Sufism so central to so much of Islamic history, or at least Sunni Muslim history, is that you have a guide. You have a
Yeah.
person who's invested in your spiritual growth, and you have a community of people who are in it with you. Now, there were other features to contemporary Sufism that led me to conclude that it was not the right path for our world now, and that there are dangers in Sufism as it's practiced today from abuse, spiritual abuse, financial abuse, other forms of abuse that come about when too much authority is given to a specific individual. There was a kind of fetishization of the past that art and culture are great, but only if they work within the models of what happened in the past.
Yeah.
And there was a disturbing proclivity to authoritarianism that some of the big names in American Sufism in recent decades are awfully cozy with regimes that have pretty awful track records. And so I didn't sense enough space there for agency and consciousness and creativity. Fine. But I've taken from that this idea that behind and beyond the rituals there is meaning and purpose. And some of it is in those things themselves. Like you said, that every night if you go to the mosque and pray with other people. I think in this moment, Ramadan is an act of defiance that we will not measure our worth by how much we earn or how much time we spend on a phone or how much we are led by an algorithm, but we will spend hours denying ourselves certain things and hours being in community with each other in order to worship God. That's what, to your point, that's who we really are. That's who we're meant to be. But
Mhm.
there's so much underneath and behind that. So I had this moment on the 27th night where someone close to me. So the 27th night is in the Sunni tradition, likely the most sacred of the last 10 nights of Ramadan. It's the night of power, the night of fate and decree, and people stay up all night worshiping or as much of the night as they can. And the local mosques do big programs and they do collective prayers, and it's a very festive, very spiritual occasion. And someone had texted a prayer to me, can you pray for this specific outcome? And because this person is close to me, I said, as gently as I could, that I think a better thing to pray for based on my life experience is not, I want this, give me this. It's give me whatever is best for me. Because I may not know what's best for me. Like, I remember when I didn't get into the college of my choice, I was devastated. I remembered when I didn't get certain jobs or certain things didn't work out, I was crushed. And then in hindsight, it turns out that that was good for me or necessary for me. So I said a better thing to pray for is, God, whatever is best for me, give it to me and make it clear to me, like reconcile me with your decree. Help me submit to you. And then I I was doing my own supplication and I prostrated in this moment hit me. Again, maybe this is Ramadan brain. Maybe that's the point that you're so tired, you're a little slap happy, right? I had this moment that said, wait a minute, why am I praying for things that if I really believe that whatever God sends our way is good for us or necessary for us, or that we are capable of facing it, would not a better thing to do while I'm here on the floor with my head to this carpet is to ask to be content with whatever is given to me and to be in a moment of gratitude? That maybe the whole point is not to ask for things or to get things. It's very transactional faith that I'm prone to. I'm not pretending I'm some really special human being. That I'm out there with a whole list of what I want, and I want this and I want that, and I'm hoping for this, and I'm afraid of this, and I'm afraid of that, and there's a lot in the world to be afraid of. So I'm not dismissing that. But maybe it's I'm just going to be standing with these people for 2 hours praising God and being thankful, and that is the thing. And that is tawakkul. That when the guest comes to my house, I don't hesitate to give the guest whatever I have. I don't worry about, is there going to be money tomorrow?
Mhm.
Not because I'm naive or immature, but because I'm so grateful to God and so connected to God that everything else becomes secondary. And I'm not, this is like a brief moment. It's not like I've reached some stage of enlightenment, right? Um,
Yeah,
but for
how did that
me,
walk back to your car go that night when you had to I'm just yeah, go ahead.
I have a good story on that, but about when I was in Mecca, it was when you're circling the Kaaba, the cubicle building at the heart of the Great Mosque in Mecca. You know, when you circle it 7 times, and you're supposed to pray for things and praise God, and towards the end, when you're so tired, you just start praying for stupid things because your brain, you're broken, right? You're like, it
Yeah.
would be nice to have this car, right? And you're like, actually, at this point, it'd be nice to have a massage, right? You know, because like I really can't feel my left leg. I'm really tired. I think I have arthritis. I definitely have it now. But I think for me, it's maybe that's the point. It's not Islam as transaction, and not just supplication as transaction, but if I do these rituals, then I will turn into this kind of person. It's I would do these rituals so that I remember who I really am. And
Yeah.
who I really am is a person created by God for
Yeah.
God.
Yeah. I love that. That's beautiful, man. Yeah, that really resonates with me. What do you do with I'm I think I'm really stuck on this idea of the ways in which religious practice and ritual trains our desires. Um and I think it's something close to what you're saying here. And you know, I totally hear you that you know, God isn't a genie we're sort of granted three wishes from or whatever. But I think there's also something really valuable to say to the source of everything, here are the desires that I do have. And I think these are my deepest desires, but help to identify what the desire is underneath that desire, the desire that I should be formed into. Um, how do you conceptualize that piece of the spiritual life?
Yeah, I'm very wary of false modesty. So we good at certain things and bad at certain things. And I think in religious spaces we should be wary of false modesty. Not to lord it over other people, but if someone has something they can contribute, for example, to the world, then I think it's an obligation to do that. Also, if you're good at something, it's okay to want to be better at that thing.
Hmm.
But I think it's about placing it into perspective. So, what I've tried to focus on this Ramadan is to help me align the desires with his ordering of the universe.
Mm,
So help me see how I can use what I have to be a better person, to be a better believer, to be a better citizen, certainly to be a better husband and a better parent, a better son. And so I think part of the work is how can those desires align and where do they become a problem? So you mentioned jokingly about walking back to the car. I love cars. I've always loved cars. And I've had this moment recently where I've become very self-conscious of what I drive and how I'm seen. And I've asked myself, because there are certain things in Islam that we have rules around modesty, right? So you're not supposed to dress certain ways, you're not supposed to carry yourself in certain ways. Fine, right? But then there's areas where it gets a little bit fuzzier, right? You're supposed to be clean and presentable and, look like you take care of yourself, but where's the line, right?
mhm,
There's
mhm,
nothing wrong Islamically with wanting nice things. But something Sufism would say, and certainly more sophisticated traditions of Muslim spirituality, is it's not just the do's and the don'ts, it's in the gray area that you're refined and even found. That how do you align those desires? That maybe, yes, I like really nice cars, or I like really nice clothes, or I like nice vacations. But is that what I'm called to right now? Is this the best use of my time? And I think that applies to anyone. I mean, I notice, I often tease the young men I teach, they spend a lot of time at the gym working on their muscles and flexing and things like that. And I say, I actually don't knock it in the sense that it actually reveals a capacity for discipline and growth, that you care about something and you're throwing yourself into it. But is this the thing that you want to dedicate your life to building? That right now you've got this window in these years where you have more energy, more capacity to learn, more ability to take on because you don't have a lot of responsibilities. What do you want to put in place now that you will not be able to build in 20 or 30 years? Is it really a six pack? Is it something else? And do you know what I'm saying? But it's not like you can't do that, right? Like you should exercise. It's like how do you put life into perspective? And it's sort of like I'll come back to what you said about the phone and social media. That before you reach for the thing, maybe all faith really is it's that pause between desire and action.
mm,
That before I reach for this phone, I got to stop and say, is this what I need to do right now?
mhm.
Is this who I should be right now? And yeah, sometimes once in a while you do doom scroll and that's cool. But if it gets to a point where I'm at the mosque and it's the 27th night and the minute prayers end and before the next prayer, I'm scrolling through my social media feed, I don't know that that's the outcome God wants for us.
Yeah, I love that, Haroon. I think the thing that the slight kind of adjustment I would make is I want to make it. This is the invitation that I'm receiving. I think right now is I want to make that a collective question. It's not is this what I want to do? It's like, is this what we want to do? Is that what you want to do, Haroon? Do we want to be this way together? And I think that is the role when religion is at its best, that it's fulfilling, right? It's the moment that asks the question of one another, of who do we want to be, of the world that we're trying to create. It's not purely about even my own whatever holiness. That's not the primary point of it. Um,
So I'll jump off of that because I want to ask if you've had an insight maybe, and I don't mean it has to be some earth shattering thing in terms of this Lent that you think you can approach the rest of the year with, or even next Lent with.
yeah. So, I talked about this already in this episode and also in the episode a couple, like 3 episodes ago. But the thing that I'm kind of doing centering prayer around is this idea of returning. I will keep returning. And the thrust of that intention was that I noticed in myself whenever I set a goal, spiritual, personal, vocationally, whatever, that when the momentum was going, when the momentum was in my favor, um, it felt great. But the but the minute I misstepped, I made a mistake, I didn't follow through, the negative momentum was just as, if not stronger than the positive momentum. And so what I this Lent, what I'm trying to do is to reframe a misstep not as, oh, I messed it all up and I guess it's not worth doing, to this is an opportunity to return back to my original intention. Um, and so it's subtle, but I think it's a significant move that I'm trying to. It's a reframing, right? It's a thing that I'm trying to participate in, and I think it's I don't know, working is not quite the right thing, but I feel myself being a little bit more gracious with myself, and not only measuring success by the amount of days in a row I haven't looked at Instagram on my phone, um, but also the capacity for me to return back to my original intention. So I don't know. I think there's something there um, that's going to stick with me. I hope. I hope. It's not about perfection. It's about intention, and then about the capacity to be able to return to that intention, even when you make a mistake. So I don't know. There's something there, I think, for me.
Yeah, I love that answer because I think I've had this. I think the moment I had in the mosque where sitting prostrating and thinking maybe it's about gratitude, it's not about
Yeah.
things, it's about just being in the presence of God. That's something that was really important to me. But if I pull back, where I think I've had this kind of realization is, so I was listening to this podcast, Hidden Brain, about depression, and they have, I forgot the guest's name, and he says that depression is actually something that nature has designed the human brain for.
Mm.
And in the same way that, for example, if you sprain your ankle, one of the reasons your body sends pain signals when you step on something, when you use that ankle, is to tell you that you need to let it rest and heal. That pain is a signal that something has gone wrong and your behavior needs to shift. And mental pain, this author, this academic was saying, is a sign, and I would go further, spiritual pain is a sign that something's gone wrong, you need to fix something. So you withdraw into yourself so that you don't commit to any choices in a moment of vulnerability and difficulty. That
Mm.
paradoxically, the kind of hibernation that depression provokes is meant to shield you from the world when you are not capable of holding the world. Maybe the world is unsafe for you. And I thought about that a lot. And I was thinking that so if you go into a mosque, there's a niche at the front of the mosque that points towards Mecca, the direction of prayer. And in many mosques, they're designed in such a way that, again, because before there were microphones, because the imam is facing in Mecca, the direction of Mecca, just like the congregation, the imam is facing away. It's easier to hear the imam if the niche is designed in such a way as to amplify his voice. Obviously, now there's microphones; it's a different thing, but we've kind of kept the form, even though we don't need it substantively. The word for a niche is mihrab, mihrab, which actually comes from one of the theories or arguments is it comes from the Arabic word for battle. It is the place of battle. And so a mihrab is the direction that is pointing you towards where you have to fight and struggle. But it's a spiritual struggle. And what I thought was so beautiful about that is that in Muslim prayer, when you stand, these are the people you're doing the battle with. The battle
Mm.
against your ego, yourself, materialism, vanity, selfishness, violence, oppression, all of those things. And the lines are not formed based on external metrics, right? They're formed on whoever happens to be next to you.
Yeah.
Their race doesn't matter, their class doesn't matter, their politics don't matter. You actually have no idea. The person next to me could be very wealthy or living paycheck to paycheck, doesn't matter. The person who's leading the prayer may be a different race than everyone else and doesn't matter. And where that hit for me is that I think for me, and I'm trying to integrate these ideas together, and it sounds unformed because it's forming over these weeks, is it's like what you said. It's sometimes I think the reason the social media thing hit me, and it hit me personally, is because we ask too much of ourselves. And then we are tethered to things that don't let us rest, and therefore they don't let us return. That I think it's more meaningful to go to the mosque for 15 minutes with no distractions than to be there for 3 hours with lots of distractions. I'm not saying that doesn't count. I'm saying that maybe you don't need the 3 hours. You need those moments of closeness and intimacy where the rest of the world falls away, where you are together with people for the purpose of worshiping God and humbling yourself, and then you step back into the world. I think that we have a lot of things that pull on our time that don't actually let us rest or return.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we actually just move through life exhausted. And it's like I mean, it's like exercise, right? If you work out every day, you will just break, right? And you have to exercise and then not exercise. You have to worship and then step away. And that rhythm, to go back to what you're saying, I think is so important and so healthy. And I think for me, what I've realized this Ramadan is that I ask too much of myself. And paradoxically, I don't do nearly enough because there's not a space for return.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That there's just a lot of noise.
Yeah. 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 I hear you. Yeah. I have this desire for you. I'm gonna try to articulate this. Okay. So I know it's crazy to go to the mosque every single night and people are just lined up and it's so busy and so hectic and it's not always the most spiritual space in the world. I also really love this realization that you had that's rooted in faith and gratitude that that the source of everything, God, the source of all, is going to provide for you, and that God is there, ready to meet you. And I would just love for, I don't know, tonight, I don't know, maybe during Eid when things are crazy, if you had a moment of spiritual significance, not sure while you're praying, that would be great, but also while you're waiting in line to park. Also, while you're maybe in a moment that feels a little frustrating because people won't stop talking. Um, like, I think there's something so obviously for me, from an outsider's perspective, in your intention to participate in that has to please God. That has to um, have some type of spiritual substance to it. And I would just love for you to experience that in these, I don't know, one of these next 3 days or so.
Tonight's an odd night. So it's no, I appreciate that. And I think that it is really meaningful. On the 27th night, I was next to actually one of my friends who's actually on the board of ICGC. He had to leave to take care of something. So he said, I'm leaving my son with you.
Mm,
And
mm,
he prayed next to
mm.
me for about 2 hours.
My gosh.
Towards the end, he just took a nap because he was exhausted. But there was this really adorable moment where near the very end, before the prayer that's called Witr, one of the leaders of the mosque got up and they thanked the imams who've been leading the prayers and just kind of gave them little gifts and things like that. And everyone celebrates people giving so much of their time. And it was very much like he was calling people up to the front, right? Like, I want to thank this person and this person and this person. And then he said, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, and before anything else happened, the way in which that statement was made, this little kid next to me like jumped up, like woke up. He's like, the Prophet's still alive? Like I think he thought that he was going to be called up to get a gift basket. I have no idea what was going on in this kid's head, but I was like, this is now officially above my pay grade. So I don't know. I don't know how I'm going to handle this kid. And I was like, just go back to sleep. Right. And
Hmm.
all the people around us kind of laughed. because it was really sweet and it was really innocent. And he seemed genuinely excited that suddenly the person from the storybooks was gonna come up and get an
Yeah, yeah,
ICBC
totally.
mug or I don't know
Yeah.
what, right? Um, but uh, I think it did hit me that it's those moments, but then it's also the ability to step away from those moments and not beat yourself up because you've stepped away.
Yeah. Yeah.
And maybe that's the point, is that as long as you have some of those moments, you have enough to keep yourself going.
Mhm.
If you don't have those moments, that's the harder part.
Yeah. Yeah. It is the harder part. It is the harder part. And the capacity to continue on the path even when those moments aren't being as readily accessible. That's
Yeah,
the
there's
challenge for sure.
11 months where there's not gonna be people packing it in every night. And so, then maybe that's the question for me. Now and maybe now this is God's way of saying, "Okay, you asked for moments of quiet and peace. If I go to the mosque for prayers next week on a Tuesday night, it's probably not gonna be a lot of people there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true.
So will I
It's
be
true.
there or am I just all talk?"
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and I think for me reflecting on it, one of the things that's been so meaningful for me stepping into more of a liturgical tradition in the Christian world is people often talk about, the creeds, the things that we say, and how sometimes it's hard to say every single part of the creed because for whatever reason there are things happening in your life, there are doubts arising, there are questions that are emerging, whatever, and the classic kind of response is that we don't say these creeds individually, we say them together. And so um
I
this
like
isn't an
that.
individual belief, it's a collective belief. And so I think um I feel encouraged to keep going to church.
That's it. That's
All
it.
right. All right, man. Good to talk to you.
Good to talk to you too.